Howdy, howdy, howdy. And hello from not so sunny but rainy Florida. Got new microphones this week, as you can see from right here. So if you could confirm that you're able to hear me and that the volume is okay, that would be very helpful this week. I just want to make sure, based on everything I'm seeing here, it should be loud and clear on your side. And based on what little recording I've been able to do in the last few days, it looks like they're working good there too. But I just want to confirm for everything. Hope everybody's doing well. We have a great show planned. I had huge debates on what to do this week. I was back and forth between charge controllers, um, between let's see if I got all my messages working. Let's see here. It's good. Thank you, Bill Siegel. I appreciate it. And absolutely, I will make sure that I cover all the prices as I go through things. I hear you loud and clear, and I'll make sure that that gets taken care of also. And thank you for confirming that the audio is working well. Um, Anyway, I spent a lot of time this week debating, which was why I was so late announcing what the subject matter was going to be. I really wanted to cover Home Assistant and um, Solar Assistant and how you hook them up and how you hook up a Venus OS and link your Victron devices into them and connect them all together. But I just didn't have time to put all the content together, and this was a much better follow-up to last week after doing solar panels, so I decided to go this route. I am not quite sure that I made the right decision. There was some good news coming out of Solar Assistant this week, though, and I heard it on a couple of other live streams. I just wanted to show you guys a little bit about it because it's a major step forward. It's not a major deal, but it is a nice step forward for us. Let's see if I could switch the screen over. Oh, yeah, that's working just fine. So you're all familiar with this, which is the Solar Assistant. Um, for those of you who choose to, over here under configuration, if you scroll down into the system here, you can choose to go into their beta mode. And if you choose their beta systems, you get updates a little bit more frequently, and occasionally you run into things with problems. One of the interesting things that they did this week on Solar Assistant, and it's been a long time coming, is we've been begging them to do what very much you see on my Home Assistant here, which is a dark theme. So Solar Assistant actually created a dark theme. So if you go in and you update to the 8.19 beta version and make that active, then you can go into the configuration screen, and right here you have a light and a dark configuration. Now I've been using this for, I don't know, probably a week now, maybe even a little bit longer. And ever since I have, it's just they did a fantastic job of making all the colors work, making everything show the way you would want it to show. I mean, all the different colors and the graphs and stuff. Putting it into a dark theme wasn't enough. They needed to go through every one of the tools and make sure all the color schemes worked, make sure all the windows worked the way they were supposed to, and they did a very thorough and fantastic job. So it's not major, but it's nice to have them maintain and keep up with it. As you can see, all of these charts are easily viewable now. They're easily to see. They work exactly the same as they used to. The only real difference, and you can see my cloud cover today, which is kind of funny, is just nonstop, with the exception of a few hours this morning, and then boop, right back to where it was before. And you can see those correlate with the power that was predicted to where I actually got power. So just kind of a little bit of information, a little bit of a little hey, check it out. There is some really cool things still going on with Solar Assistant. So hopefully next week, that's what I'll do, is I will take an installation, or at least a partial installation, of Solar Assistant. And I don't know if you guys just heard that, but I just got some big thunder here. there's been some thunderstorms going on all day and rain for the last weeks, and it has just been devastating to my production. Usually I'm up in the 30 kilowatt zone, and today I'm sitting at 14. I don't know what that comes in with the solar shed. We can kind of jump over here and take a look at it with the solar shed. Also, we are looking at 700 watt hours. Wow, that is pathetic. And you can see how bad it's been. If I go into the Victron history, I mean, the solar shed is normally down here in the 7s and 8s. Once I switch that over to those the panels being 3 in series, 4 in parallel, and you can see it has just been a month, almost a month of just rain every single day. But that is part of having solar. So it's nice to do it during the summer when it's nice outside and I can deal with it, than to figure it out when it's really, really cold outside. If I was in a different climate, it would not be very pleasant. Anyway, that's just a little bit of news. In addition to that, RE Plus is happening in Las Vegas this weekend. It's a big trade show and convention for the solar industry, and unfortunately I can't make it this year. I hear that there are a lot of people going, so if you're going to be there and I missed you, I apologize. I will make every effort to be there next year and to make sure that I can attend the large events and keep up on the news for you guys. My suspicion is that EG4 or Signature Solar is going to have some kind of announcement this time. They've been hinting that there's some changes coming up on some of their equipment. So I'm hoping that we'll get some new equipment maybe out of it or something cool. Anyway, that's going on. And then I do want to point out that the government refund, I don't want to call it a refund, what is it? The rebates that are still going on are good till the end of the year. And I want to make sure I clarify and state this for everyone, that the rebates are for those systems who are in operation at the end of the year. Now, they reworded it a little bit funny, and it used to kind of mean that it had to be installed. It had to be installed and all of that. Now it doesn't look like it's necessary. Obviously, I'm not an accountant, and I hate doing accounting. So, but now they're saying that would be good during the all the way to the end of the year. So if you're thinking about purchasing something and you see it, now is the time to do it. The deals, the Labor Day deals, the Black Friday deals, and all that kind of stuff, it's going to be lining it up for the end of the year. So get ready for it. And I'll make sure that I post and keep you guys all up to date. So if you're not subscribed already, make sure you do, because I'm going to make a habit out of, even if they're little videos, just quick ones with all the deals coming out. Because once Christmas starts to roll around, and Thanksgiving, and Black Friday, and Cyber Monday, and blah, 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 they just roll these things out like crazy, and I wouldn't want anybody to miss anything. I have noticed a considerable number of new orders going through in the last couple of weeks, and thanks everyone who is using the links. I kind of give everyone an idea of how it works. If you use the links and you purchase it through the links, I get a small commission. It doesn't change your price at all. If you don't and you call in or you do something like that, I get nothing. So for those of you who have been ordering it offline and doing that, if you need to talk with them and you still want to be and help me out, then you're welcome to call them, get your answers, and then still place your order online. I don't know why they do it that way, but that's the way they do it. And I think a lot of it is to prevent cheating and stuff like that. So you can't really hold a grudge against that. So I will be pointing out all of those deals as we go forward, making sure that you have full access. Regardless if you're a subscriber or not, those won't necessarily be early posted videos. Those should be on time, live, real time, as soon as I get the news type thing. Unless it's a few hours or something like that, won't be a big deal there. I see we already have a couple of messages coming through, so let's see what we got here. We got CJ saying, this will be my first winner with my new Victron 15060. And I'm going to put that on my list that I'm going to start over here, because today is all about charge controllers. And so Victron makes it pretty easy. They give you an easy way to know what kind of charge controller it is. and how much power it can accept and how much power it can bring in, get from the panels, and how much it's going to be able to give to your batteries based on your battery bank size. Not all of them make it quite that easy, but a lot of them do, or you have to go and dig in some cases, but once you understand the formula, all the math we can walk through quite carefully and slowly today. So if you're having problems with it, at all times feel free to ask me questions, send me emails, ask me live, and you can ask anyone who's written me emails or written messages out on the forum. I answer everything, or at least I try to answer everything as best I can. CJ's got 4 370 watt panels, and I'm assuming with 4 370 watt panels, what voltage are you running, CJ? So depending on the voltage size will depend on how many amps. And with a charge controller coming from Victron, this is going to be you want the voltage, and this is where some of the math starts, and I'm going to try to make it really easy. So this is what Victron always does, is it puts in volts on this side and amps on this side. And to make this easy for you, it is volts going into the charger, volts, and amps going to the battery or out of the charger. So they always tell you the in and the out. And it really is as simple as it really is almost as simple as just these two numbers when you're working with charge controllers. So you're looking at, I clicked on the wrong button here. Let me try that again. There we go. 2S, in 2S, I'm assuming it's 2S 2P, and they're running at 47 volts. Okay? Yeah, 2S 2P. I'm sorry, I missed the next message. I'm only a half awake today. Sorry about that. So yeah, 2S 2P. So that means that you've got your solar panels configured with 2 of them like this, and then another set of 2 like this. These 2, ooh, don't knock that over. These 2 kind of connect together like that, and then the positives run off of one panel, and the negatives come off of the other. And then he hooks this to the charge controller. And that way it acts as if he's got 2 different lines coming in feeding his charge controller. Now, he's running 47 volts. Is that 47 volts coming out of the panels or a 47 volt battery? I'm assuming it would be a 48 volt battery, a 24 volt battery, or a 12 volt battery. So that allows us to work with the battery size and to calculate. So this is, if he's got 2, if the panels are 47 volt panels, which I'm assuming that's what he's talking about, that means that if he's got 2 here in series, it would be 47 volts times 47 volts running at 96 volts, which would be the input to the Victron charge controller. 47 volt panels, just confirm that. Thank you, CJ. I know I'm using you as an example today. I hope you don't mind. So that's the 96 volts going in. And then he's using, I don't know what size battery he's got. And that's why it's very important to know the battery size that you've got. Now, a lot of charge controllers will support multiple batteries. So in the case of Victrons, most of them support 12 volt, 24 volt, or 48 volt. They do have a series of less expensive ones that only support 12 volts or 24 volts. And don't let the voltage confuse you. Don't let it mess with you. Let me just kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about here. So if you go into a Victron, and I'm just going to switch this over to the computer screen so you can just see what I'm seeing. And you can see here that this one says it's a 48 volt controller. But if you click on the details of it, I'm just going to pull this one up, and you scroll down here, let me just scroll down, specs, voltage 12. Now this is a really lousy description. This particular model happens to support 12 volts, 24 volts, and 48 volts most likely. Now, this one only supports 100 volts coming in, which would make this very dangerous for CJ. As you can see here on this chart here, he's running at 96 volts. And so you wouldn't want to feed that into a charge controller that's so close, sitting at 100 volts, because in the winter, believe it or not, when solar panels get cold, they run more efficient and the voltage goes up and they produce a bit more power. So you have to be very careful that you're not running very close to the edge here. Now he's running at 150 volt charge controller. So let me see if I can find one of those real quick, because that would actually give us a little bit better. There it is. Well, there's a 150/45. Let me see if they've got a 150/60. And if they don't, yeah, let's just go over to Signature Solar. My guess is they have one. 150/60. Now, I'll make sure I cover prices here too on these, because I know the charge controllers, the Victron charge controllers, are kind of one of the ones that I really like, because they come with a very flexible amount of They come with a large variety, I guess is a better word for it. A large variety of sizes, and you can get them to really meet your needs. And as you can see here, there's a 70, there's a 100, and these are all 150, a 35, another 70. Let's see, we don't have a 60. There's got to be a Victron 150/60. 150/100, 150/35, 150/70. Everything but. But this is the beauty of Victron, is they have such a huge selection of charge controllers that you can usually go with a lesser price one. So let's talk a little bit about prices here. So here you're talking about a charge controller, this one here, and let me just launch this one, and let's launch this one here next to it. So here you're talking about a Victron 150/35. Now this is less than, just a little bit larger than 50% of the size of the, so you're running at 24 volts then, I think is what you're saying. Let me see if I can switch that message over, you guys, so you can all see it here. So I think this is what you're saying, is that you got 4 12-volt batteries running in 2 series, 2 parallel at 24 volts. Okay, so that means that this 60 amps, and this is the real simple math that you can do here. If you take this 60 amps, you can take 60 times 24, and I didn't switch my screen either. There we go. Now you can see what I'm actually writing on the screen too. 60 times 24. And that means that he can support a maximum of 1,440 watts. Anything under 150 volts going in, and he can support up to 1,440 watts of charging to his batteries. Now keep in mind, a 24 volt battery has a range. So that 60 amps won't necessarily be set at 1,440 watts. If he's running at, let's say, a 24 volt battery can run as high as 28 volts, then 28 times 60, he could be running at 28 times 60, 1,680 watts. And if he's running really low and it's early in the morning and he's way down at, let's say 24 volts, he could be running way down at 1,440. So you're going to have a range there, and this is going to be true on all charge controllers. Almost every charge, not almost, every charge controller that I have seen uses this technique to tell you This is the maximum that the electronics that feeds into the charge controller is sized to handle. And this is the maximum of the electronics that feeds out to the battery size and the equipment that's there can handle. So they size this for you here. Now, some of them have started listing what they call the maximum input. This is the maximum potential that it can take, and this is the maximum output that it can go through. Now, what happens when you get, as long as you stay within this voltage, if you get more than the 60 amps, let's say that he's running at 14 volts and he has 1500 watts of power, what happens? Well, it just cuts it off. It just trims it off at the 14.4 and sends it out at the maximum peak. And I see that all the time with the solar shed. The solar shed right now, with the 12 volt setup that it has, is 12 volt 20 amp, and that means the maximum it can charge is 240 watts. Well, there's 500 watts of panels hooked up to it. So it's what we call over paneling. For those of you who missed last week, that video is pretty much worth watching also. The over paneling allows you to, yes, and you've got it right on the nose, CJ. I'll make sure I'm actually broadcasting the right screen here. I am. That over paneling allows you to input more than at peak you would have, and therefore it kind of holds that maximum at the time. There's a cost and a benefit. Obviously, you don't like throwing away that extra power. At the same time, sometimes buying enough charge controllers to handle it can be expensive. And this is where we want to go back and talk about price on this. So we're looking at the Victron, and I want to see if I can find your exact one. And I'm going to jump over to Amazon again and try putting in Victron 15060 over there. Victron 15060. Found it. Okay. So here it is. The Victron 15060. And I'm going to put a link in the chat for you guys for that one, in case you're interested. But this charge controller is 150 volts, and you can see this description actually tells you everything that I was just saying. This description, and I didn't switch the screen, sorry about that, I got to get better at that, don't I? So this description, if we look at this description here, this charge controller is fairly expensive. It's $330. Anytime you start getting over the 100 volt range, things start getting more expensive because they have to build to handle higher voltage. And especially when you start getting over the 30, 35 amps, that's when things started getting really expensive. And you'll see here in a few weeks when I post a video about a Victron 250-100, the price on something like that is obnoxious. So here we're looking at it. We can actually start this with a little price comparison up here at the top of the screen. That actually might be very useful. So we do a 150/60, and we're going to do it at the price of $330. Now, $330 means that we are outputting to the battery 330 divided by 60 amps at $5.50 an amp. Now, when we get into some of these other Victron chargers, you'll see that there's a variance in the cost of them. So let's go and take a look at, and so you can see here. Well, I put that up where you can't see it. Let me do that again. Let me just put that right down here. So 150/60 is the charge controller, and it is at $330, and that equals $5.50 an amp. And we can kind of keep a running total here, and I'm going to put Victron here because we won't only look at the Victron ones, but they have such a huge selection of them that it's really easy to come up with a list from there. Now, let's go into talking about let's go in and talk about a little bit smaller ones. So let's use what we have the solar shed hooked up to, which is a 150/20, or excuse me, 150/35. So a 150/35, and let me see if I can find it here. There it is. And we'll switch this over to the computer so you can see it. And I will get you a link for the 150/35. And so the 150/35, as you can see, it is $178.80. Now, this is a little bit cheaper unit, but it's a lot smaller in size than the 150/60 that we were just talking about. So if we put this one up on the board, 150/35, and we labeled it at $178, and we do the math on what this one actually runs, which if I do the math on this one, 178 divided by 35, we're looking at $5.08 an amp. So it's a little bit cheaper per amp to go with the 35. But the problem is that it makes configuring your panels more difficult, because now you've got clipping that starts to happen at 35, and if you need that, then you don't have enough room. So if we look up at what CJ's got going on, he has got how many, I missed completely how many watts he's got going on here. He has got 4 panels at 370 watts. 4 times 370 watts, 1,480. So theoretically, he is perfectly sized for his system. And the only time he's going to be, clipping a little tiny bit at 1480 is right at 24 volts, which is not, in a 24 volt system, does not happen very often. Most of the time he's going to be up at the 25 range, and then up to 26 during the day, 27 towards the evening, and 28 when he's leveling off and balancing. So you really shouldn't have much trouble. So for him, he would actually have to get 2 of these to make this happen, and then he would have 70 amps, and it would be more than he needs. And even though he would save a little bit on per amp, it would cost him more in connecting 2 devices, managing 2 devices, and so on and so forth. So as you can see, the Victron has a wide range of different charge controllers. Now let's go with something a little bit smaller. And this is where things start to get very, very difficult with the charge controller, because the output, if you remember, is based on this voltage. So when you drop this to 12 volt system, you also drop the maximum output of wattage, meaning that if this was a 12 volt system that CJ had instead of a 14 volt system, he would only be able to support 720 watts of power, and half of his panels would be of no use. He would need 2 of these charge controllers to achieve the same thing. Now, the opposite is also true. If CJ had taken those 2 or those 4 batteries and put them into a 48 volt system, he would then be able to charge with, instead of 4 batteries, 8 batteries for a total of 2,880 watts. And the math is exactly the same. It's very simple. It's the amps times the voltage. And that equals max charge power. And that is one of the easiest calculations to remember, and it's always very simple in a Victron system because they always tell you what it is. Now, the question commonly becomes, okay, if that's what happens in a Victron system, but what happens in other systems and other charge controllers and that kind of thing? And the answer there is pretty simple also. If we go over to, let's say, just randomly go over to Signature Solar, and I am just going to switch this to the computer so you can see me do this. And I'm just going to run down here to charge controllers. And this is the link at the top of the chat, so if you're interested in any of these, just feel free to use that link. But here you can see this is a 48 volt, 100 amp charger with a maximum input of 500 volts. So this would be the equivalent of a Victron 500/100, meaning its maximum input could be 500 volts and the maximum output would be 100 amps. But because this charge controller doesn't have the flexibility of the multiple battery sizes, it only works with the one battery size, then you would be stuck with a 48 volt system, but you would also be looking at 48 times 100, 4,800 watts of charging with a battery that's at 48 volts. And of course, most 48 volt batteries sit closer to 53 most of the time. And 53 means 5,300 watts of charging. So as you can see, the cost for charging 12 volt batteries is significantly more. Now, the other consideration you have to really think about hard when you're working on a charge controller is what can the batteries that you have take? And this is where it's one thing to know you have enough panels bringing that power in. It's another to try to put too much power into the batteries and cause them damage or cause them to shut down. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's talk about typical, and I'm not going to say this is true for all batteries, but let's talk about typical batteries. So if you have a 100 amp hour battery, typically you can discharge this battery at about, you can discharge this battery at 100 amps. So if you wanted to discharge, the maximum you would be able to do it would be 100 amps, meaning this battery would discharge in 1 hour if you ran at that max. But usually you can charge at a max of 50 amps, and it's suggested that you charge at either 20 or 30. I'm going to use 30 for the sake of this. Now, this means that if you have a single battery and a 30 amp charger, chances are you wouldn't be able to charge with any more than that anyway. And so you wouldn't want to hook two 30 amp chargers to one battery, because then you're going to exceed the capacity of this single battery on a regular basis. Now, it can handle up to 50. That doesn't mean that you want to do up to 50 all the time. And then the question becomes, well, if it's not doing it all day long and it's basically just doing it for an hour in the middle of the day at peak and stuff like that, then you're okay there also. And I missed that message from you, CJ. Let me run back and grab that real quick. So what you're saying here is that the Victron posted a documentary interview with Victron founder and his son a few days ago about Victron on the Victron channel. Yeah, they have a lot of very good educational material as well as their videos. They're very bland, they're very boring, they're not near as much fun as like me. No, kidding, sorry. I couldn't resist. They're not near as much excitement in them. They're very straight to the point. They're very, this is how you do it kind of thing. But they're very educational if you can handle the dryness of them. But their documentation is top notch. It really is top notch. All right. And I'm not sure where I was here. I lost my place. I do want to, okay. So we were, oh, I see where we were. We were over here in the Signature Solar looking at these different charge controllers. So you can see here, that is just a standard EG4 charge controller if you wanted something that could charge at 500. Now, this is typical EG4 type 48 volt stuff. If you bought like a 6000 XP, the all-in-one, not only would you get a charger that's the equivalent of that, but you would also have the inverter that went with it. You would have a charger from not only from solar panels, also from AC power, and you would have an inverter that went with it also. So we would kind of cover all of them. Then you can see the Victron 250-100 here. This is the this one is $612, and at $612, if you take that and divide that by 100, now you're looking at $6.12 on this scale here. So the flexibility of being able to go to the larger units is costing you almost $1 more an amp just to have that flexibility of putting all that power in at one time. Now, if you look at something like the EG4, so we put the EG4 here, EG4, and it is a 48 volt, 500 volts divided by 500 volts and 100 amps. And if you do it, and its cost is $512, that's $5.12 for that charge controller for the same equivalent that over here on the Victron you were paying $6.12. So it is a lot cheaper than the Victron. Now you don't end up with the same software, which is kind of the upside and the downside. It depends on what your other equipment is, depends on what kind of communication with the batteries you want to have and that kind of stuff. But in this case, it's definitely a lot cheaper. Now we can go down and look at like the Grow Watt. I don't see in that description how big that is, so let's just open that up and take a look. The Grow Watt is a 7,000 watt 250 volt at 120 amps. So we'll take that back to the board and we will add that to our list of Grow Watt. The Grow Watt is 250 volt 120 amp, 250 120 amps. And so the cost on that one is off of the website. Well, that's not what I wanted to see. Let's see if we can find a price for that. That's the same link that I did have. Oh, I'm sorry, not letting you see what I'm doing here. Let's see if it's available on Amazon, maybe. Wow, this thing has got a mind of its own sometimes. There it goes. Yeah, not there either. This is giving me a trouble here. Let's see, Grow Watt charge controller renewable. There it is, 300 and, well, that can't be right, can it? That's a really good price. So this is a 48 volt, 250 volt for 300 and $69. So $369, and that gives us a cost of $369 divided by 120 of $3.07 an amp for charging. Now, again, you're limited to a 48 volt charger here, but a lot of this applies across the board to, if we go back over here to Amazon and we look up let's say we want a 24 volt charge controller. So on a 24 volt charge controller, here's Renogy with one, and they've got a 20 amp, and it does 12 or 24 for only $79. And $79 divided by 20 amps is going to be $3.95. So you're still not down into this grow watt range where you're at $3.07. But you look down just a little bit further and you got a 40 amp 24 volts. So you got a 152 divided by 40 amps, and you're looking at $3.80. This thing here is a lie. This isn't even MPPT. We're going to go down a little bit further here. Then we've got some Victron ones and a couple of other brands here. But as you can see, the price range here is very, very much so in the range of, if I can get that off the screen for you here. Let me see if I can. There we go. It's pretty much in the range of anywhere from $3 to $6, depending upon the brand and what you're trying to do, thus making it even more complicated to kind of build your system out. And a lot of it really depends on what you want to do with your charge controller. So I'll give you an example. The Solar Shed is a perfect example of where a bunch of little small charge controllers, if I knew what the configuration was when I started, might be better than doing something along the lines of a combiner box or putting multiple strings in parallel into a single inverter or into a single MPPT charge controller. And the reason being is that then you have all the efficiencies of it operating at its peak performance all the time and not being affected by either a small voltage deviation between it and the other strings in the line, or by any shade or any affecting of other panels within it. So for example, in the Solar Shed, we have 4 strings, we have 4S, and we have 3S 4P, meaning there are 3 solar panels connected together, and that's what feeds the system, but there are 4 of them that do that. There are 3 panels that face east, 3 panels that face west, 3 panels that face up, and a 4th series that is a combination of 1 panel on the roof that faces up and 2 on the south side. Now I'm hoping that those panels will produce better in the winter because the angle of the sun will benefit us when it comes to that time of the year. We'll see. I don't really know yet. Now, that said, these all run between 98 and 101 volts. So what I could do, as opposed to having one 150 charge controller, 150 amp charge controller, is I could have multiple smaller charge controllers. And because these are running all down here at this the same voltage, if I had 120 volt, and I don't know if they sell something at size. Let's go out and investigate it, because I really haven't looked at it very close to see what would I do if I was to do it that way. So let's say we are looking at 150 volt slash, let's see how many, we got to figure out how many amps we really need though, don't we? So if we're running at 12 volts and we have 3 panels at 750 divided by 12, 750 divided by 12 would give us 62 amps, and that means that 24 volts is going to be 20 amps, and 48 volts would be 10 amps. Now, that interesting thing is the 10 amp charge controllers are relatively inexpensive. So let's see if we can hunt down a charge controller for this charge control. Let's just put in Victron and see if it pops up. Victron 150/10. And let's see what we have here. We may not find anything that small. They have some 10, 70s. Wow, they're all big. So the 150s are all larger sizes. I wonder if I went down to 100/10. There we go. So 100/10. Where in the world These are all huge. There's 100/15 at $78. And let's see if 100/78 divided by 15 is $5.20. So really, we're not looking at much more of a premium if I was to have 2 or 3 or 4, one for each of these strings here. The advantage would be that none of the strings would have any interference on any of the other strings. Now, there is some argument to be said. Obviously, if you put panels in series, they all have an effect on each other unless you're dealing with some of these newer ones that have some bypass diodes and stuff like that. But if you're dealing with putting panels in parallel, like CJ's done with his panels, and he's got two sets of series and 2 in parallel, theoretically, unless there is a huge voltage drop between the two, you shouldn't see much losses across that there, too much so that you would think that it would be a real problem for CJ. Now, could there be some gain from doing it in the case like the solar shed? And I'm skeptical. I might just try it just because it would be a fun thing to try and to order, they've got this 115, although my problem with 100 is it puts it just at that breaking point, and I know it will set it'll set it off. So I need to find a charge controller that does about 120, and it could be 10 amps, but it does need to be 120. So this is kind of the same problem that you're going to find anytime you go to sizing a system, is what can you do? That's not what I wanted. Oh, I see what I did here. And when I'm looking for little charge controllers, I can't find them. And now that I want to find one, I can't find them at all. When you're not looking for them, they're all over the place. So theoretically, I could go down to 2 panels and do it that way. But then I've got to worry about splitting the panels on the west side from the east side and putting them in, 2 in series apiece. Originally, when I configured the solar shed, that's what I did. I had 2 on the east, 2 on the west, 2 on the south, and 4 on the top as 2 different sets. That's an alternative also. The thing is now I got 12 panels there instead of 10. It might just be the loss of 2 panels, or kind of do something to fudge those together somehow, kludge them together somehow. So I don't know. That's an interesting thought. So just want to kind of check on how we are doing. Is anyone? I lost my status screen somehow. So hopefully we're still online and still working here, but I can't see anything. So give me just a second to validate that I am still online and reconnect to my status window here. And yes, there we are. We're still online and still working. Yeah, we are still there. Okay, good. So sorry about that. I just didn't know if we were still active or not, and I couldn't tell, so I wanted to connect. So anyway, the idea here is that with the solar charge controllers, you have a large amount of flexibility on how you configure it and how you make it work. So the idea is to come up with the right configuration for what you want. Now, here's where it gets complicated. Like when I built the solar shed, a lot of the times you don't know what you're trying to build, and you go to something and you start laying it out like this. And on the solar shed, I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but when I started, it started off with 2 panels in series on this side, 2 panels on series on this side, 4 panels on the top like this, and then 2 on the south and 2 on the west. And so I literally had it arranged like this, where I had 5 different series, 2 in series and 5 in parallel. I later went back and added a panel here and a panel here, and this is west, east, south, north, and this is the roof here. So sorry about the crudeness of the design. But the idea here is to find the most efficient way to do it. And for anyone who's watching, you'll have seen that I released multiple videos where I did 2 in series and 5 in parallel. Then I did 4 in series and 3 in parallel, and then I switched it to just recently to 3 in series and 4 in parallel, moving things around. Now, some of them haven't had huge differences, and some of them have had wide differences. Interestingly enough, the one I haven't tried yet, though, is to put them all on different charge controllers and see how that works. I'm not really convinced that I want to do it. I don't know that I want to just buy a whole bunch of charge controllers for the pure sake of just testing it. But what I could do is pull each line out independently and test it independently, and then consolidate the results together and come up with an answer that way. I don't think that paralleling the lines on today's variations of solar panels has that much of a loss in it, simply because the voltage drops that I've seen were, active running on the ones with some active shading going on, running at 98 volts, and the ones with full sun on the roof are running at 101 volts. So you parallel those together, and you don't really have but maybe 2 or 3 watts of loss on the high end and 2 or 3 watts of gain on the low end. So I don't think there's any major loss there. Anyway, I don't know if, so let's take a look at some additional charge controllers and kind of get an idea of what other ones are available and what kind of mixed different types of things that you can come up with. And then we'll get into a couple of questions and go through some feedback that I got. So a lot of the ones out here on Signature Solar are based on 48 volt systems. I do have a 24 volt system like CJ's. It's very similar in my coffee trailer. I run a 2,000 watt or a 3,000 watt inverter, depending on what time of what time of the year it is. I've been considering switching that over to either a larger 24 volt bank and running 2 inverters, or just switching it over to a 48 volt bank with a larger inverter. I like the idea of running 2 charge controllers though, because that allows me to split the coffee trailer into two parts and size one specifically for the espresso machine and the coffee pot, and then maybe have a third or something along that line for all the ancillary devices that are smaller and easier to manage and just have a little bit more surge on them. But I haven't really gotten to that. We haven't really decided if we want to continue doing the outside shows or we want to go directly to inside shows at this point. So there's a little bit there. So let's look at the, so down here you have a Victron, and you can see here as we start getting into these larger ones, here you have a Victron. Now this would be more for a whole house type environment. You probably wouldn't use this just for your, wow, I want to see that panel though. That is really cool looking. Oh, those are MC4 direct feeds, so you have 4 PV inputs feeding into this charge controller, and it's 200 amps of power with 4 PV inputs. Now let's take a look at the data sheet here. This is an interesting one. So like all the others that we discussed, you end up with either the 450, like this one here with the 450. Let's see if I can make that a little bit bigger for you. There we go. You scroll down here and you got either the 450 100 or the 450 200, and you can run either 5.8 kilowatts of power at 57 volts or 11.5 kilowatts of power at 57 volts. So you can see that these can get rather large, but the price tag goes along with it. And sometimes, depending on what you're trying to do, the flexibility goes along with it. Now, that said, Sometimes in a system, when you have that much power going through it, you want those batteries and those inverters to talk and to communicate and have that closed loop communication going on in order to prevent the fact that you're sitting at 98% and you got 6 charge controllers pumping in as much as they can at full steam. And this would allow it to temper that a little bit and slow it down. So there is some of that. Also, if you're looking at a 12 volt system or a smaller, one of the smaller 12 volt systems, you're not wanting to pump in that much amperage. You want to keep that try to keep that amperage under control, and you might want to keep a single one so that you can control it and make sure that it doesn't overflow it. But that's kind of the benefits of doing some of the closed loop stuff, is that you end up with gaining some of that you end up gaining some of that you end up gaining that control of when to slow the charge down and talking more with the battery so that the charge controller knows how much it can send and or how much it can make available really is more it. Because a lot of the batteries, even on open loop, and don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with open loop. And open loop just basically means that the charge controller is going to do it based on a voltage profile, and it's going to make a certain amount available. As the voltage in the battery climbs, it will increase its charge rate, and then it has a top window that it stops increasing the voltage, and the battery stops absorbing it and gets fully absorbed in what it has. We've been using closed or open loop since lead acid was around and since chargers have been created. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. The closed loop does make it a little easier for the battery manufacturers to control how the batteries are charged, when they're going to get, how much power they're going to be able to get, what's the maximum they're going to be able to get, shut them down. It also allows things like in the Victron system, if you've got 6 batteries and they all can, if we go back to, they all can take in a certain amount of charge, let's say 30 amps, and you have 10 batteries, then you're going to want the Victron to say, hey, look, I want to see a maximum of 300 amps coming into the system. And if 2 of the batteries get full before the other ones, it would be able to take those 2 batteries out and say, instead of 300 amps, I want 240 amps because that 60 amps is no longer needed. So it allows that kind of control, and that is dependent upon the charge controller that you get. Whether you're looking at a all-in-one type charge controller, or whether you're looking at something more like the one that we have here with the Victron system, with the one that we had on the screen here, where you have a Victron that may plug into a bigger system with a Servo GX and that kind of stuff. A lot of what is out on these sites, in the DIY market, a lot of us like to put together our pieces and parts ourselves. This is no different than any other DIY world. If you are a plumber, you like to build your own pipes and your own sinks and stuff like that. If you're not, then you want to go to the store and you just want to buy the pipe and just connect it one end to the other and be done with it. Same thing's true with DIY solar. Some of us like to build the batteries all the way up from cells and do all the wires and do all the connections, and some of us like to build the charge controller dependent of the solar panels independent, and and some like the Victron system because of that availability of the pieces and parts. And then some of us just like to buy a system that is ready to run. If you don't want the fuss of putting the whole system together and building all the independent pieces, there are a lot of, if you go out into Signature Solar, the link provided up at the top, you will see there are entire kits and bundles out here. So you can say, you want a grid-tied system or a mobile solar system, or you want a hybrid system or an off-grid system. I personally like the off-grid system, meaning that I can operate off-grid if I need to, and I can use the grid for backup power when I need to, or I can provide a backup for the grid when I need to. Grid-tied is more of a, when the grid's there, you're going to supplement yours and replace some of its power. So if you're not one that wants to do the DIY thing, there's nothing wrong with that. You can come in here and you can find systems that are completely already built for you. So this one, for example, this is a perfect example of a good system. You have the solar panels already arranged for you. How many you're going to get is already in here. You've got some of the cables choices made for you. You've got a 15 kilowatt battery, a 6000 XP split phase inverter. And so you can buy a system like this, which is also in the link down below or at the link at the top, and you can just come right over to kits and stuff. But these type systems are put together for those of us who still want to do the installation, but you don't want to deal with the actual pieces and parts and working all the math and understanding all the little pieces and integral parts. Some of us like that aspect of it. I'm one of those people, I like that aspect. I also like explaining that aspect to other people so that they understand what they need to do that. So if you're one of those people who want to do, which I do quite frequently, I do consultations online, and you can get to that from my website. There's a link down below for that, and you can schedule a consultation. I'll look over your plans for what you're planning to do, whether it's an RV or your house or whatever, a cabin, a solar shed, whatever it happens to be, and I'll give you ideas and things that I see that you could change and make it better or worse, or things that I see that I don't like the way it's been done, and I would suggest more better ways or safer ways to do it. So that's always an alternative. Today is more about the charge controller itself than anything else, which is why we've spent so much time on this page over here. Just know that the rest of that content is there, and you can get to it very easily. You can get to it very easily just by going to the links at the top of the channel or at the bottom of the channel. Now, I do want to get into a couple of questions here. So I'm going to, I think I'm just going to switch back to my main feed so that you can see me and you can see the whiteboard. And I'm going to move to the river, or I'm going to move to the ocean, I think. And let's see if I can do that really easily. Oh, I see. I'm on the wrong screen. Wow, I thought that would be easy. Anyway, so we are going to, there we go. We're going to switch to the solar shed as the background so that on the second part of this, so that we can talk a little bit about the Q&A and just cover a few questions that we have from people. So I'm going to get that kicked off, and if you have any, please feel free to put them in the chat window at any time. I always encourage and like to cover all of the questions. And let me see if I can go back. There we go. All right, so let me see if I can make this big enough where I can read it. There we go. All right, so I am going to start here with John K. asked, what does a charge controller actually do in the solar system? And this is a really good question and probably a good place where I could have started before. And I'll just go right back to the whiteboard for just a second and kind of give you an idea of what it does. So in a solar system, you have 4 really core components that are part of your system. And I'm going to take some cleaner and just clean off a small section of this board here to work with, if I don't make a complete mess of everything in the process. So I'm going to clean off this section here so I can answer this question. So a charge controller is really a power altering device. So in the case of what we're talking about with solar is you have solar panels, and those solar panels are feeding power in to the charge controller. Now, charge controller. The charge controller can take a wide range of DC power, and let's talk about in the GrowWatts case between probably around 50 to 100 and 250 volts. In the case of the EG4 here, this one goes as low as 120 volts up to 500 volts. In the case of the Victron, it can take any of the voltage to 5 volts over the battery to up to these voltages here. Now what it does is it converts that battery, that DC electricity, into DC coming out at the, so the in comes from your solar panels and the out goes to your battery. And it will convert it to the right voltage so that your battery can absorb as much of it as possible. Now, lithium iron phosphate, AGM, lead acid, all of these batteries have what they call a charge profile, which is basically the optimum best way to charge them. And so a lot of these charge controllers are configured to handle each of these battery types in a very specific way to optimize the largest percentage of power that they can get from these panels and into these batteries. So in this case, the charge controller is a power conversion tool. It converts this up and down flow of these panels from the sun goes in, the sun goes out. You have 4 panels connected, you have 3 panels connected. It's sunny in the morning, it's sunny in the afternoon, there's a shade in the middle of the day. All this fluctuation of power here into a nice steady flow of power down here to allow for the maximum absorption of power in this battery. Now that is really what the MPPT does, is it takes that maximum power that it can get, it converts that maximum power into the same consistent power that the battery needs, and then allows it to absorb that power, and then continuously does that over and over and over. On the Victron, you will even see the Victron go in, and I might even be able to show it to you on one of my Home Assistance views. Let me see if I can pull it up here. I'm going to just switch to my computer and see if I can get the Home Assistant to show you the Victron. Is this one here. And if I zoom in on this here, and let's take the timeline of this, let's take from about 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock should be good. So let's take today to today from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. That wasn't what I was expecting. What was that? Okay, so you will see Victron here has these little spikes, and I'm going to see if I can zoom in on this a little bit more. 11:10 to 11:15. Let's try that and see if I can get you a little bit more detail. 11:10 to 11:15 a.m. Okay, this right here. So, and this is actually not what I was talking about. That is just clouds, unfortunately. I thought I would be able to see it clearly. You see these spikes here, and if I zoom in on them, you really can't see them. This is the Victron device going in and fluctuating up and down. And let's say that you're charging a 48-volt battery, and your solar panels are at 100 and what was it that CJ was at, 96 volts. What it will do is it will search between these two like this and ping different voltages to see what is the best voltage that it can pull that power from. And that you can see from this chart here, between, you know, all day long it goes out randomly seeking and searching for that maximum power point all the way to the end of the day. And the bigger that gap, the bigger that searching window is, as you can see from this chart here. So that is what the question was. What is what does the charge controller do? And it basically takes that voltage, converts it for you to make it nice and consistent from that fluctuating one that's coming in from the sun, whether that be a higher voltage down to a lower voltage or whatnot. Now, in the old days, before a lot of the charge controllers existed, they did have solar panels that were 17 or 18 volt little solar panels that were 10 and 12 watts, and you would plug them directly into a 12 volt battery. Now, it worked. The problem was that they also had a tendency to overcharge things and cause problems, but because they were so low wattage, it wasn't massive problem as it would be today, where you have 10,000 watts of solar panels on your roofs in a lot of houses. So I hope that answers the question. I'm going to move on, and if it doesn't, please feel free to include a request in the comments and I'll cover it again. Maria from Texas asked, why can't I connect solar panels directly to the battery without charge controller? I think I actually just answered this unintentionally. The fluctuation in this power, if you do connect it directly to the batteries, you have to do it at a very specific voltage, and that means that the sun can't come up and down, you can't have shading, you can't have anything. The world has to really work around a very optimal part. When you do it with a charge controller like this, you can pump that voltage up to 96 volts. And even if you're charging a 24 volt or a 12 volt or a 48 volt system, it can convert all that power down to that voltage and make it very consistent and get a high percentage of it converted without very little loss. So the danger pieces of it, there are some, is that you can overcharge a battery and cause it damage. The lithium iron phosphates of today have the BMS system, which the battery management system that is built into them, that is made to prevent you from doing things like that. But it is a last resort. It's not meant to be there just for protection because you want to hook solar panels up directly. It is there because something went terribly wrong and it wants to stop you from damaging and hurting your battery. And a lot of the times that's the last draw would be the BMS saying, hey, look, you've overcharged me, or hey, look, you've gone too low and I'm going to stop allowing you to discharge me so you don't do any damage, that type of thing. So that is why, because there's a high percentage of cases where you could cause damage to the battery, or you could cause inconsistency or loss of efficiency during the charging process. What is the difference between PWM and MPPT? The PWM, the very easy thing, is basically when I just described the MPPT. It finds that point here in the middle. It uses that chart that we talked about here with Victron to this one here to determine what the best maximum power point there is for it to extract that voltage. The MPPT is very, very simple. It basically just chops it off at the voltage that it needs, it throws away everything above that. At the same time, if it's below that, it can't use it and it throws that away too. So there is a lot of waste because there's a very thin, narrow band there of where it's optimal to what it's producing is what it's converting and what you're able to use. Everything above that gets thrown away, everything below that gets thrown away. So that is kind of what's going on there with the difference between the MPP and PWM. There is a video attached in my channel that goes into a lot more detail if you're interested. How do charge controllers protect batteries from overcharging? This is very simple. In a closed loop system, and there are a lot of ways that it does it, but I'll go through a couple, at least the top 3 or 4 items. So the first one would be in a closed loop system, the battery is actually in constant communication saying, hey, I need this amount of power. Hey, I can take this amount of charge. Hey, I'm at this point of state of charge. Hey, slow down your charging rate as we get closer to the top here. We don't want to, put too much voltage, too much power in and cause the cells to get out of balance. Slow down so that they can, they can keep up and charge a little bit more equally. It allows it to treat the battery a little bit more battery friendly by communicating directly with it. It also, how else does it protect it? The charge controller can protect it by saying, hey, you're at full charge. We're going to switch over from a full charge mode where we're sending battery. Victron's famous for its float mode, where it reduces that voltage, knowing that once you're fully charged and you're going to sit here for 8 or 10 hours, there's no reason to set at that really high zone. It can drop it down to the little lower voltage and still maintain that higher voltage. So it gives it a little bit of a rest there and doesn't stress it out all day. And so those are the two really big ones. It also has some shutoffs and some cycling time and a little bit more programming in there to pay attention to the battery a little bit closer, whether it's on closed loop or open loop. I think I've only got about 10 questions here, so I'm going to go through them as quickly as possible. And if you have questions, feel free to just state them out to me, and I'll be glad to go over them. Do all solar systems require a charge controller? No, they do not all require a charge controller. There are a few things, like there are some trickle chargers for boat batteries and things like that that don't require them. Any solar system that is using any significant amount of power, you would not find me hooking it up without one. I'm even a little leery sometimes of the little trickle chargers that you put on a boat battery or a car battery for when you're traveling. But no, they do not all require it. It's just recommended. I highly recommend a charge controller for every system. What happens if you use the wrong size charge controller? And I guess the question becomes what happens if I use a 60 amp charge controller in place of a 30 amp charge controller and my battery can only absorb so much? Well, hopefully your BMS will protect you. It'll protect, maybe have overvolt protection. If you're still within the boundaries of what the battery can take and the overvolt protection or the overcharging doesn't cause immediate harm, it may cause it to wear and tear earlier. So there's a lot of different things there. If you're talking about the wrong voltage, you can have a very bad day. Are charge controllers needed for lithium batteries the same way they are for lead acid? Yes, they are. There is a BMS on lithium iron phosphate batteries. This is because it allows the battery to protect itself, and it allows a less complicated system and a fail-safe to when the other systems go wrong. A lot of these BMSs have over voltage protection. In other words, there's a short somewhere, it allows it to shut it down. If there's too much voltage coming in, it allows it to shut it down. If one of the cells gets out of balance, it allows it to shut it down. A lot of the lead acid batteries didn't have that type of protection, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't need it. They just didn't have the right profile to allow it. The charging profile on a lead acid battery was it can absorb so much so fast. Here's the mathematical calculation, and this is all you need to build into a charge controller to mount work. Lithium is completely different. Lithium iron phosphate batteries can absorb at a much higher rate and a much more variable rate, and therefore the charge controllers and the method in which they charge is much more complex. Also, the voltage ranges are a little bit different. Can one charge controller handle multiple battery types? Most of the time, one charge controller can charge different battery types, whether that be a lead acid battery, whether that be a lithium iron phosphate, an AGM, whatever the case may be. Most charge controllers, not all of them though. I would suggest that you look in the manual and figure out what it is. That's also true for things where you have, like in RVs, where you have converters, where you plug into shore power and the converter charges the battery for you. A lot of them can automatically adjust also, but not necessarily all of them. And two more. How long do charge controllers usually last? How long do charge controllers usually last? To be honest with you, as long as I have been in the industry, I haven't had but one go bad, and it was replaced by warranty. They are remarkably resilient and last quite a while. So I would give them a 5 to 10 year range on most of them, and most warranties these days are falling in that same category. Tyler from Ohio asked, what are the most common features people overlook when buying a charge controller? And the most common thing they overlook is any future expansion, anything that they're thinking about doing in the future. They all think they can live on a lot less than what they actually want to live on, and they don't take into account the little devices that use up energy that they're not counting. For example, the inverter. What does it cost to run? All the tools and stuff that run the solar system use power also, and they don't take some of that into account, and they either come up short or they end up spending way too much for a solar system way bigger than they need to handle it. So both sides of that fence are equally as bad. Um, so that really is the questions that I had for today, and I kind of pushed through them very quickly. I'm sorry about that, but I think that really covers what I was after today. I am looking forward to next week when I go over the Home Assistant and the Solar Assistant installations. I would like to walk through an actual show you how to do the installations. I'm not quite sure how to do some aspects of that yet from a live stream. So I will do my best, or I will come up with another subject if I can't do it that way. But anyway, I think that this is probably going to be one of my shortest live streams. I wanted to get back into it and get you guys some things there, get you back into understanding the different components of the solar system. So we have done quite a bit. We started off hurricane season with the doing complete off-grid systems, and the Solar Shed is looking forward to another remake coming soon with a much larger battery system, and so I hope I will see you on that one. If there's any other questions or anything, please email them to me. If you are watching on the YouTube channel as opposed to the live stream, thank you for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and don't forget, you have to the end of the year to get that solar credit. So get those purchases in, use the links, it'll help me out. I really appreciate all that you do. Thanks to all my subscribers. Oh, and I did not go in and do any type of review of how big we are. Let's see, I don't even know. I didn't even look. So today we are sitting at 12,288 subscribers. It is fantastic of you guys to continue with the support that you've got. The members are wonderful. Thank you to all my members. You are helping pay for all of the wonderful things that we get to build together. Your feedback is very valued, and to all those subscribers, 12,288 is just amazing. It's a wonderful thing, and I really do appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Have a great week, and if you have questions, feel free to email me, schedule a consultation if you need it. Follow those links if you want to order anything, and if you need help, let me know. I'll be glad to help you. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next week, and we'll see you on the channel later on this week.